7 must-do exercises to build a strong core. Now, you know the importance of core training, but you might just be thrown in some planks and some sit-ups, things like that every now and then. In this video, I'm going to give you a more complex breakdown of how exactly to structure your core training, when to do it, what exercises to use to get the most out of your core training and develop a strong core and bulletproof back. Come follow along. So just a little bit of context here. Now, your core is technically every muscle that controls pelvic lumbar motion, okay? That also technically is your glutes, it's technically your lats, okay? So it's everything, it's so many muscles included. It's not just your six-pack abs, your rectus abdominis, okay? So rather than think of things as individual muscles, think of things as movement patterns. And this is one of the easiest ways to think about them, okay? In terms of core functions that we want to cover within your training. To make this video short, because this could be hours and hours long. I've given workshops on this that are days long, okay? We're going to just show you one exercise from each of these categories to give you an idea as to what it looks like. So we've got flexion, okay? So this is your typical probably core exercise. It might be something that you're doing right now because your typical flexion exercise, your spinal flexion exercise, like your crunches, your sit-ups, even though that's hip flexion as well. Those are the exercises that you commonly do. Now, those exercises tend to only isolate the rectus abdominis, that six-pack abdominal. They also get a little bit of activation in the obliques and a few other areas as well, but mostly they're isolation exercises. We've then got rotational type exercises. Now, they also do hit that rectus abdominis type area, but again, we're not thinking too much about muscles, we're thinking about movements here. When it comes to rotation, if you want to improve your golf swing, if you want to improve your forehand, backhand in tennis, all things like that, we need to be taking rotation into account. We also, if you think about it in day-to-day life, and in the gym, we're not improving this much, okay? We tend to be doing this stuff right here in the gym. We don't tend to be improving that. So actually, if there's one thing that you might need to be adding, it might be some kind of rotational type movement here. As I said, I'll go through this as we go along, and in later videos at a point, then I will go into a little bit more of a deeper dive into each of these as well, and what transfers to what movement, all that kind of stuff. Next up, PPT. Posterior pelvic tilt. Now this is one of the least talked about. Actually, I'm gonna go and grab something just so you know what I mean. Okay, posterior pelvic tilt. Now, trusty dowel here, okay? Now, easy way to think about this. Imagine my pelvis is sat flat, right there, okay? Posterior pelvic tilt is literally this, okay? I would say, if you're a guy, I'd say it's cock up, right? So it's a posterior tilt of the pelvis there. Now, if we think about what that's doing and what's here, okay, it's those lower fibers of that rectus abdominis largely that's contributing to that movement when we're talking about most core exercises. But also, if we think about what's there, so bear in mind, muscles can only pull, right? They can't push. So we've got to think about what's producing that movement. It's something pulling this way, so here, and it's something pulling that way. So what's there? It's your glutes, right? So it's your glutes pulling and your rectus abdominis and TVA, everything, all kind of helping pull in that one direction, okay? The simple way we're going to think about it today is that it's more of a lower abs type of movement, okay? But obviously your glutes are part of that as well, okay? A part of that core. So that's posterior pelvic tilt. Now those type of exercises are like your knee raises, your leg raises, your reverse crunches, all things like that that we typically think about as like your lower abs. We've then got lateral flexion. Now lateral flexion is just simply this, okay? We don't tend to do a lot of lateral flexion. I don't tend to program much, if any really, lateral flexion type stuff, especially for people that are looking to keep their waistline relatively like tapered in. We don't want to be adding too much thickness to those like external obliques really. But if you think about like old school dumbbell movements where you've got like a dumbbell by your side and we're like bending sideways, that's what lateral flexion is. Where I do program lateral flexion is with anti-exercises. Anti-exercises are resisting movement, okay? So what I mean by that as it relates to lateral flexion is anti-lateral flexion. So it's resisting lateral flexion. And I can show you some stuff like that in a minute in the video that helps you resist. Because if we think about that movement, let's say you're at the airport, you're carrying a suitcase, right? As you're doing that, you're trying to resist lateral flexion. It's pulling you one way. So if we can improve your ability to resist lateral flexion, it's not a daily task unless you're at the airport every day, but there are lots of scenarios during your day where that would transfer in terms of strength and help improve longevity and lifestyle and things like that as well. I've got an 18-month-old, right? I've got a 4-year-old and an 18-month-old. The 4-year-old still wants picking up. The 18-month-old wants up all the time. I've probably got them on one side. I'm resisting collapsing towards that one side. Again, there's another scenario, okay? Anti-exercises. We've also got flexion, extension, anti-extension. So resisting extension, anti-rotation, resisting rotation. And again, I'll show you those. Posterior pelvic tilt. Those exercises tend to kind of tie in with the flexion exercises, as in anti-PPT and anti-extension exercises all kind of come together, and I will go over an exercise that covers that as well. And obviously we've already gone over lateral flexion. Hopefully this video hasn't bored you already, but I wanted to give you some context, and now I'm going to go into each exercise just to give you an idea as to what to do. But really, all I want you to do from today is go away knowing or understanding what you're doing right now and the areas of your training you might be falling short, or these movement patterns you might not be already including. That doesn't mean to say that you need to be doing like 8, 9, 10 different core exercises, because actually, if you've got your head screwed on, there will be a lot of these movements that are already covered in some of the exercises that you're doing in your workout. I'll give you an example. If you're doing a 3-point dumbbell row, you're single arm rowing, you're actually resisting an element of rotation as you're doing that as well, okay? So there's lots of scenarios where you might already have this covered and you might not need to be doing it, but there are also areas where you haven't got that covered. Easy flexion exercise, kneeling crunch. So I'm gonna show you this one because this is a common one I see in gyms that are incorrectly performed. So I've got a dual rope attachment here. Now, really with these, you want enough weight on the cable stack where you can lean into it, okay? A lot of people actually don't have enough weight where they can perform the exercise correctly, and they feel as though they need to sit back into it. Whereas if you have enough weight, you can actually lean forwards into it. So what I mean by that is actually me being able to have enough weight on the stack so I can lean forwards right here and I'm not kind of falling down. So that's my position there. It's my hip stacked over the top of my knees, and then I'm trying to isolate flexion. So I'm simply here, keeping the angle or the distance of the cable of my forehead the same throughout, and I'm crunching, I'm pulling my rib cage down towards my pelvis, closing that space, getting rid of as much air as I can, and then coming all the way to the top. So it's down, it's breathe out, and in. So all I'm doing is trying to isolate flexion, which is simply closing the space between your rib cage and your pelvis. If you find you're someone that's in this position and you're pulling back here, one thing I quite like to do is actually get a giant medicine ball or like a slam ball and just throw it in that position there. So it stops you from actually sitting back. It also will increase a little bit of hamstrings activation, which long story short actually helps shut your hip flexors off, which works your abs a little bit, but more on that another time. Exercise number 2. Rotation. So any kind of chop variation is really, really good for this. So for this one, all I'm going to be doing is just 1 foot forwards, 1 foot back. I quite like to keep the cable height for this one about the same height as my chest. So you can do like high to low, low to high. You can do cable facing chops. You can do chops coming from slightly behind. There's all different variations you can do with chops. You can use bands for this one. That's really good. There's loads of other exercises, obviously, apart from chops as well. You can use a plate for a chop. You can use a med ball for a chop. There's loads of options, okay? But a cable chop is one that I see commonly misperformed, and it's one of the most easy one you can access, okay? So 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. We've got that cable set, and all we're gonna do is try and create as wide a path as we can coming all the way through, and we like to see that heel leave the floor at the same time, so a little bit of hip extension coming through on that same side, right? So it's here, we're drawing a line all the way across the torso all the way there. I quite like to think about it as aiming that cable over the elbow as you're doing so as well. So we're here and back to that start position. Wherever your hand goes, your head's gonna follow through with it as well. So this actually for me is quite heavy. It's quite hard to breathe. And actually I'm compensating a little bit with that hip. So I'm actually gonna make that a little bit lighter for you, so I can demo it a little bit better. But we're here all the way through, and then we're just controlling with this hip, not letting it collapse as we come back. Now that is a cable rotation or cable wood chop onto the next exercise. So posterior pelvic tilt, I'm going to show you hanging knee raises. So quick tutorial on this. Now, what most people do is they set up within hanging knee raises, and you can use like a captain's chair. You can hang with both hands. I quite like to use ab slings with these, okay? But most people are only raising their knees from here to here. Now, what's mostly happening here is hip flexion. It's not that posterior pelvic tilt, that cock up position that we're actually looking for. So instead what we want to be doing is thinking about getting our knees as high as we possibly can so we can roll that pelvis. So as we do that knee raise, we're also putting our elbows down to help get that last little bit at the top with control, okay? So we don't want momentum, we want control, and we want precision with this one. So it's here, and it's that last little bit here. That's where we are truly working, especially our lower abdominals, but we are working that posterior pelvic tilt movement pattern. And obviously if knee raises get a little bit easy, then you can go to straight leg raises. But again, the idea is to make sure we're hitting that top point where we're actively seeing that roll of the pelvis as well. There are obviously other variations you can do. You can do hanging knee raises, leg raises. You can do reverse crunches on the floor, which work kind of the same movement pattern as well. Loads of different options, but that's one I see often performed incorrectly and one you can easily add into your own training right now. So as I mentioned earlier, I don't tend to program or instruct many lateral flexion variations with my clients. I just don't see as much value in them. But there are a few that I do like to throw in every now and then. So obviously like dumbbell side bends, they are an option, but not a big fan. These are a better option. So they are called side plank raises. So essentially set yourself up for a side plank on a box, but what you're doing is allowing that hip to collapse, drive the elbow down and the hip up. So we're allowing ourselves to collapse and then drive the hip up. So here to here. So that's a good lateral flexion exercise. We're going to drop straight now into a resisting movement, which will be an anti-lateral flexion movement because we're here, so which is just a basic side plank. So basic side plank is just right here, and that's about resisting the movement. So we might be holding that for 20, 30, 40 seconds. I'm going to show you something that I prefer a little bit more than those though, which will be the next exercise. So suitcase carries. These are a sneaky way to kind of include a little bit of conditioning work, a little bit of grip work, as well as anti-lateral flexion to your training. And that's why I like them, because you get a lot more bang for your buck with these in terms of the time. So you can do these marching on the spot, but the whole idea is this kettlebell's here, it can be a dumbbell, but what's happening right now is it's pulling me right here. So I've got to get organized and get everything nice and level and hold it in place, okay? So you can march on the spot like this, right? You can go for a walk like this, all stuff that's very applicable to real life situations. As I said earlier, you can sneak that in as core work. You can go really heavy, drop the reps or drop the duration right down. You can go a little bit lighter, treat it as conditioning work. But that's something I do like as a big bang for your buck movement that helps kind of cover that anti-lateral flexion component as part of your core workouts. Next up, I'm going to show you an anti-extension movement. And as I said at the start, anti-extension movements kind of also cover anterior pelvic tilt. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. Easiest one here is a plank and more advanced plank variation. So I'm going to show you what I mean, okay? So if I set up for just a basic plank right here, I'll show you what's going on. So right now, I'm resisting going here, right? So it's like that sucky back, okay? So if you imagine what's going on right there, it's that anterior tilt. So I'm resisting an anterior tilt, and I'm resisting extension of the spine, okay? So I'm resisting here, okay? So everything is working really hard to resist and get me aligned and get me strong in that position, okay? So you can obviously use a basic plank variation. I'm a big fan of ab wheel rollouts, especially at the bottom position, even iso holds in ab wheel rollouts. You can do plank variations using a stability ball. There's loads of different variations you can use here. I'm going to show you a posterior pelvic tilt or a long lever plank, okay? So a slightly more advanced high tension plank variation. So you're going to set up in a basic plank variation here. And now you're going to take your feet as far down as you can and have your elbows as high as you can. As you do that, I want you to have your hands as close together as you can and your elbows close together. And in this variation, as opposed to a basic variation, I actually want you to have a little bit of rounding of that upper back. And that helps kind of keep that lower back locked in and resist that extension a little bit more. Okay, so you're going to see a little bit of rounding from upper back. So I'm elbows together, I'm feet together, I'm getting long, and all I'm going to do is think about driving the elbows down towards my toes up towards my elbows, hold, squeeze my bum as hard as I can, squeeze my abs as hard as I can. If you are shaking in this position, you're doing it correctly. If you're not shaking, you're doing it incorrectly. As you can see, that's a really high tension variation of a plank, and one you can throw in if you've already mastered your basic plank variations. Give that one a shot. Sometimes called an RKC plank. RKC plank technically is slightly different than that, but that's how I like to teach them. It's a good high tension plank variation. Finally, one of my favorite anti-rotation exercises, which is a pal-off press, or any pal-off press variation really. You can use a cable. I quite like to use a band for this. Easy setup, especially if you're doing like small group coaching kind of formats. If you don't have enough cables, you can use a band any way you want to. So I'm going to show you a pal-off press variation, which would be called like the A to Z pal-off press, and you'll see what I mean in a second. So basic pal-off press here, I like to get in the athletic stance, slightly soft on the knees with hips back. Put it in towards the midline. Now, as you press it out, you're trying to resist it pulling you back in. And obviously, as we press it out, it gets a little bit harder. So we're down the midline of the body. We're keeping organized in that position. We're pressing it out and keeping it aligned and in the middle. Now, from there, instead of just holding there, now you can hold there for 10, 20, 30, 40 seconds. But what we're going to do is keep it interesting. We're going to draw the letters of the alphabet in capitals. So we can stay there, we can go there, and we're going A, B, C, D, etc., all the way through. The whole time we're resisting rotation, we're resisting being pulled into that position there. If you're just doing a basic pal-off press variation, i.e. just holding it there, I quite like 10-second really hard holds, reset, pull it in, go again, 10-second hold, reset, go again. Or you can do more like the long duration stuff and just hold it there. And that's why I kind of quite like mixing up and adding like an A to Z, or even reaching overhead and back down. You can do pal-off press variations in like a half kneeling, tall kneeling. There's all different variations. You can even kind of have it coming from behind as well, but that doesn't quite hit that anti-rotation component as much as obviously you want. So that's the final one as part of our movement patterns. Have a think about your current training, what you have covered, what you have done. Feel free to comment below. Let me know what you're doing right now. I can maybe give you some ideas as to things that you can throw into your workouts. Obviously, the best thing is to always get in contact and for us to be working together to actually formulate that plan to make sure you're covering all bases. So if you want a strong, solid core, we need to be thinking about all directions, not just those crunches and sit-ups, which to be honest are probably a bit of a token in your workouts right now. So if you're serious about core training, get in touch or drop a comment and let me know if you have any questions.